Hey, warm up for the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Nate Hornung, better known as Shaggy Bets over at Your Betting News. We're going to chat with him about just how he's taking a look at the landscape right now, the top teams in the sport, but also some of those tier 2, tier 3 teams that he's looking at. Some of the teams that are providing some value right now. We'll dive in a bit on the Monday games as well. And then in the final segment, get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @G_81. Keep in mind, letter CM, naming does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today. We had ourselves a fun day of college basketball on Sunday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Illinois is now 16-10 against the spread and 16-10 to the under as they were the lone ranked team that was in action on Sunday, and they were able to just absolutely demolish Indiana by a count of 71-51 for Indiana. Just absolutely nothing doing from the floor in this one. They go 6-24 from three-point range. Indiana loses the turnover battle by a count of 9-2, and for Illinois, they didn't even shoot a great from three themselves. 7 of 31 from three, but David Barosic, he went 3 of 6 from the outside. He was the main guy with 25 points, 7 rebounds. Illinois wins the rebound battle 38-25 as well, so just nice destruction here. And Kylan Boswell back in the fold in this one, and Keaton Wagner, he played really well side by side with them as Wagner 18 big points. And then if you're looking out there in the Big Ten, well, it's not been such a savory year against the spread for Maryland. They're 10-15 against the spread, and they got things started very early with a nip and tuck game against Rutgers that did not go their way. They were tied 27-27 at the half, and another loss and non-cover for them, 68-57. Rutgers is able to get it done as Maryland's 7 of 30 from three-point. Rutgers just 5 of 18 from the outside, but Tariq Francis was able to supply 21 points, so that was rock solid. One of your best under teams in all of college basketball was in action on Sunday as well. That'd be Cincinnati, and they were on to going to now 7-19 to the under, and yet another non-cover for Cincinnati. They have not covered many numbers this year, and quite frankly, they and the team that they were playing, Utah, have both been relatively rough against the spread thus far this season. Utah actually now 13-12 against the spread with the cover that they got on Sunday, while Cincinnati, they slip back to 11-15 against the spread. For Cincinnati, they get the win, but no cover, this by a count of 69-65. Game looked like it was going to go over very early on, but then things died down as Cincinnati just 4 of 15 from three-point. They win the turnover battle 13-6, but for Cincinnati, they were unable to really knock down a lot of their shots inside as well. They shoot just 44% overall from the floor, and Keno Da, 16 points, 14 rebounds, kept Utah lively in this one as Utah did a good job winning the rebound battle by a count of 40-30. This is something that you don't find very often as Merrimack, they're able to get the job done in this one against Quinnipiac by a count of 56-49. And if you want good under teams, go to the Metro Atlantic, ladies and gentlemen, because my gosh, there have been a lot of great under teams. Merrimack right now one of the leaders of the charge at 9 overs to 18 unders, but the team that they were playing, Quinnipiac, now 9 overs to 18 unders, but Merrimack wins this game 56-49 despite the fact that Quinnipiac doubled them up on glass. Quinnipiac won the rebound battle 46-23. Heck, Quinnipiac had 22 offensive rebounds. Merrimack had 23 total rebounds, but for Quinnipiac, they go 1 of 16 from three-point range. For Quinnipiac, 17 out of 61 from the floor, and Merrimack 18 out of 20 at the free throw line. KVR Kennedy, 24 big points, so he was able to get the job done out there, and we've seen a few teams get eliminated from the Metro Atlantic tournament. Ryder will not be taking part in it. Another non-cover for them against Sacred Heart, 86-75 the final, as for Ryder, it's just been all sorts of bad for them, as they actually go 7-15 from 3 in this one, but they lost Sacred Heart to go 12 of 33 from three-point, and every single starter for Sacred Heart scored in double figures. By the way, for Ryder, 8 overs and 16 unders for them. You've had Canisius go 7 overs, 18 unders. They're now eliminated from the Metro Atlantic tournament as well as they lose to Manhattan 69-65. That was a game that stayed under with Manhattan going 7 of 16 from three-point range and 18 points out of Gene Winston. They've been a little bit of a disappointment as well. So They're a very interesting team to take a look at as well. And then also in the Metro Atlantic, you've been able to have a lot of unders in Siena and Marist games. Siena 67-63. They take down Marist. They were up 18 points with about 8 minutes remaining, and Marist made a bonsai charge, but neither team could shoot it from 3 in this game. 5 of 23 from the outside for Marist. For Siena, they go 2 of 11 from 3-point range. And for Siena, 10 overs to 17 unders thus far this season. For Marist, 9 overs to 15 unders. By the way, your lone team above 500 to the over thus far this season in the Metro Atlantic, Sacred Heart at 14 overs and 13 unders thus far this season. So that's how wild this conference has been. At Iona, now up to 10 overs to 17 unders thus far this season, as well as they were in action on Sunday, and they lose to Niagara 70-68 final in this one. This was a closing total that did find itself in the mid-130s, so you were able to get an over in this game. As for Niagara, they would deal with an injury to their top scorer in Justin Page, but they were able to get 17 big points in this one out of Brian Griffith. He was able to make all but one of his field goal attempts, so that was big for them, but we've been seeing a whole bunch of unders out there in that conference, and if you're looking against the spread in terms of Metro Atlantic as well, you've had a few teams that have been quite fruitful for you. Merrimack with their win 17-9-1 against the spread, and then St. Peter's now 14-8-1 against the spread. They were in action against Fairfield on Sunday, and they took it to them 83-74 the final. This was a line where St. Peter's in a lot of places was either a very, very slim favorite or a very, very slim underdog, so they covered all those numbers, and they had TJ Robinson off the bench be able to supply 21 points, so they do find a way to be able to persevere, get the job done out there. One of your lesser teams against the spread in all of college basketball this year, that would be the Meep Roadrunners of UTSA, but they go on a 20-2 run late against Charlotte, and they get the outright win as they now go to what is still a really bad number, 7-16 against the spread thus far this season. As for the Meep Roadrunners, they do get that win by a count of 88-79, and for Charlotte, they just gave it up in this game. As for UTSA, they did a really nice job in terms of winning the Turner battle, 13-3. For UTSA, they go 18 of 20 at the free throw line, while Charlotte was 7 of 13 at the free throw line. And for the Roadrunners, 20 points out of Jameer Simpson. So yay verily to them being able to get a nice quality winner out there. Also, your top over team in all of college basketball is in action on Sunday, and if you, like me, had the over, you have to be just salty about this one. Denver now 19 overs, 5 unders, and a push. A lot of places had this overnight at a 159.5 with the total, got up to about 160.5, 161.5, 83-76 the final, as you had 87 points in the first half in this one. Denver was down 10 points with about 30 seconds remaining. They drain a 3 after Omaha had missed a 1-1, and then with 24 seconds remaining, they decided to not foul. I don't know what happened there. If you, like me, had the 159.5, you have every right to feel salty. Omaha goes 11 of 19 from 3-point range in this game. By the way, it was a relatively low-tempo game, and for Denver, they do lose the turnover battle by a count of 10-7, and for Denver, you did have a nice expose, 22 points out of Logan Kinsey there, but a very rare under out there in a Denver game, so that one was a little bit intriguing, to say the least. Things have been intriguing out there in the Missouri Valley Conference, as well as Valparaiso has been a team that has been able to cover a lot of numbers for you. They don't do so against Indiana State, 76-75 the final. That actually drops them to 15-10-1 against the spread, and Indiana State now becomes that top cover team out in the Missouri Valley Conference. They're 15-9-1 against the spread, even though they've been not so great with regards to their offense. For Valparaiso, by the way, they don't cover this game because they went 10 of 21 at the free throw line. Carter Hapoy went 1 of 8 at the charity stripe. He literally attempted 8 free throws and had 7 points in the game and went 3 of 3 from the floor. Don't find that very often, so that was one where if you had Valparaiso, you have every right to be a little bit salty there. And then the Missouri Valley Conference had a lot of games in action on Sunday, and one of the best games, in my opinion, was Belmont versus Murray State. How about the swing that you saw in this game? Belmont is down 15 points at the half, 39-24. They get down as many as 18, and they win by 17. Belmont outscores Murray State in the second half by a count of 63-31, 87-70 the final. Murray State with a meltdown of all meltdowns as Belmont goes into flamethrower mode from 3-point range. Tyler Lundblade, 4 of 7 from 3. He supplies 12 points. Belmont overall goes 10 of 22 from 3-point range. Belmont has had a tough time taking care of the ball all season, but they win the turnover battle 15-13. Belmont, a bad free throw shooting team, decided on this game that they were going to go 17 out of 20 at the free throw line, and Jack Smiley, well, he was smiling about the fact that he was the top scorer in this game for 21 big points. So Belmont now 15-11-1 against the spread in Missouri Valley Conference play. Right now, your worst team against the spread in Missouri Valley Conference play, that would be the Drake Bulldogs, as one of the better under teams in all of college basketball. Northern Iowa just absolutely took it to them. They were able to get the over because of the expose that they put on, 86-62. The final is for Drake. They go just 7-24 from 3, and Northern Iowa had been shooting about 31.5% from three-point range at home, 12-29 from 3 in this one for Northern Iowa. They win the turnover battle 10-7. He had 18 big points out of Max Weisbrod, the D2 transfer, so he was able to do a nice job, so they get the job done out there. Bradley, 70-60 winners over Southern Illinois. That's a rare cover for them. They've been just 10-16 against the spread this far this season, and for the Braves of Bradley, they go 9-27 from 3, and they hold Southern Illinois to going 0-15 from 3. You had Kelron House provide 26 points, but for Drew Staffy, you have to wonder what was going through his mind. He had 6 points and went 0-8 from three-point range. He attempted more threes than he had points made, so that's not good to say the least. And Southern Illinois, they won the rebound battle 39-37. They went 16 of 19 at the free throw line, but they made no threes in this game, so that was not necessarily amazing to say the least. And Missouri Valley Conference play has involved a lot of unders as well. Yeah, saw a few overwhelming games on Sunday, but we're looking at the landscape of the conference. Southern Illinois with that under 8 overs to 18 unders. Northern Iowa 10 overs to 16 unders. Illinois State now at 11 overs to 15 unders as they played a slobber knocker of a game against UIC. UIC just took it to them, 83-56. The final. This was a closing total that was more in that very low 140-ish range. It should have been able to get there to the under, but for Illinois State, just 9-35 from three-point range in this one, and UIC all of a sudden 10-6 out there in Missouri Valley Conference play. So we have to give them a little bit of an ode and a little bit of credit there. You also saw Seton Hall be able to land another under, and they were able to get the job done against Butler, 63-58 the final. As for Butler, things have been going just a little bit sideways for them here in conference play with the Seton Hall team now 10 overs to 16 unders thus far this season, and Seton Hall doing a great job in terms of covering numbers, 16-10 against the spread, as Seton Hall was down at the half, and in the second half, they were down throughout much of it, but for Seton Hall, the man that was able to rally them back, A.J. Stanton-McCray, 19 points. Seton Hall 5 of 15 from 3, and they go 10 of 22 at the free throw line. That's not great to say the least, but Butler was just 13 of 20 at the free throw line. Butler, they go 5 of 21 from three-point range, and Butler actually wins the turnover battle 14-9, but they lose the rebound battle 41-38, and they shot 19 out of 63 from the floor. Not good to say the least for the Butler Bulldogs out there. And then this was another very fun and fascinating game as Charleston, they now go to 15-11 against the spread. They've had a little bit of a come up after since they had a very, very rough start to the season for Charleston, 62-57. They're able to take it to Campbell. As for Campbell, they have not been great with their three-point shooting all season long. This was another level. 2 of 21 from 3. DJ Turn It Up Smith, their top scorer for the season, he had 11 points and he went 1 of 13 from three-point range. That is not going to cut it. And for Charleston, they lose the rebound battle 39-34. They lose the turnover battle 13-7, but they went 5 of 14 from three-point range. And Campbell decided that they were going to launch a bunch of threes, and they did not hit any of them. So that was not necessarily so great for them. You also saw a relatively solid cover team take the floor as well in Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic, they lose, but they're able to cover in a lot of places, about a 4.5 or so point line overnight. Now 15-9 against the spread. Game goes to overtime. South Florida 84-81 winners, and you needed the overtime if you had the over. I personally got a 163.5, so it was a massive sweat for myself. Some places close as high as a 165.5, so hopefully you were able to get in on that one early. But for Florida Atlantic, they did have Cannon Carlisle, their number 2 scorer, come back in this game. He had 15 points, and then Devin Vanterpool 26 points. But the man that was able to lead the way for South Florida, how about Wes Enos, 27 points, 5 of 9 from three-point range. So South Florida, they do find a way to be able to persevere outright, but the cover that goes to Florida Atlantic, so they continue to be relatively rock solid on that front end. Do have to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern. We've got one game lingering out there between the Seattle Redhawks, who have been a really nice under team for you thus far this season, and Oregon State, and right now that game is trending well under the total end for Seattle. They're going to go to 9 overs and 16 unders thus far this season. Oregon State, by the way, was 15-12 to the over entering into the night, and right now it's a Oregon State team that has been up, down all around. They were down 36-18 at the half in this game, so that's going to be another nice hearty under for you as well. And they do have to mention that the UAB Blazers, a team that has been a little bit up and down, they played a very, very big giant slog against Tulane, 55-54 the final. Tulane is able to go on the road. They're able to get it done, and it's been a Tulane team that has been very interesting to their totals as well. Now 14 unders, 9 overs, and a push, as for UAB, one of the worst three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, decided to launch 27 threes. They only have 4 of them. For Tulane, 5 of 5 at the free throw line. UAB, 10 of 17 at the free throw line. So even though UAB wins the rebound battle 47-36, they win the turnover battle 10-8. Tulane is able to get the job done. So a yay verily to them. And then out there in Horizon League play as well, we'd be remiss not to mention some of those, as IU Indy has actually been one of your top under teams in all of college basketball. If you took the overnight total, it may or may not have been able to get there to the over. It did get there on the early number, though. 11 overs to 15 unders, and by early, I mean the AM number on Sunday. As for IU Indy, they are able to get the cover. They do not get the win against Fort Wayne, though. 83-78, the final in this one. As for Fort Wayne, just 5 of 11 from three-point range, and Fort Wayne went 14 out of 30 at the free throw line. If you, like me, laid the points with Fort Wayne, you have every reason to be a little bit less than pleased there. And for Fort Wayne, they win the turnover battle 13-9. For IU Indy, they go just 10 of 35 from three-point range, but Fort Wayne unable to come up with the cover because they were unable to hit their shots. And then you've had some very good over teams out there in the Horizon League as well. Oakland being one of them, 17 overs to 9 unders thus far this season. We saw them play a nice slobber knocker against Robert Morris, 93-69. The final in this one total was in the mid-150s, and with Robert Morris going 13 out of 30 from three-point range, that was able to get you that over. And in this game, you had Nicholls Chatakulis, 20 points, 13 rebounds. He was able to come up very big for Robert Morris. They're up to 16 overs to 10 unders thus far this season. Cleveland State, 17 overs to 7 unders. That is a top 20 mark to the over thus far this season. And for Cleveland State, they played a nice quality over against Wright State, 102-90 the final. So another non-cover for Cleveland State, who went 12 of 28 from three-point range, but Wright State shoots 62% from the floor, 12 of 27 from three-point range, and they win the rebound battle 36-21. So a lot of fun out there. And if you're looking at your top/bottom teams against the spread in the Horizon League right now, as we saw a lot of those teams in action, UW Green Bay has now went 16-10 against the spread. But in the battle for the great state of Wisconsin, you did see Milwaukee rally in the second half, as Green Bay was up 31-25 in the first half, and really they were controlling this thing throughout. But Milwaukee 75-72, they find a way to get the job done, as Green Bay was up 8 points with about 8 or so remaining, and heck, they were up 64-60 with about 5 minutes left. Max Hall supplied the team with 32 points, 7 rebounds, but for UW Milwaukee, they're able to persevere here as they go 7 of 15 from three-point range and 30 out of 37 at the free throw line. So that was a rare non-cover for Green Bay, and actually your top cover team currently in the Horizon League, that would be Detroit. 14-8-1 against the spread. As an underdog, they get the job done outright against Youngstown State, 76-70. As for Youngstown State, just 5 of 22 from three-point range. And Detroit, they did a nice job winning the rebound battle by a count of 38-32 as well. And for Youngstown State, that drops them to now 8-15-1 against the spread. Meanwhile, Wright State and Robert Morris, so I mentioned before, now both 15-10 against the spread this season. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball right now, it has been all about underdogs and unders thus far this season. But if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, we've gotten some good quality overs. Right now, if you're looking at the season numbers, the under rate is about 50.7%, 2,261 unders, 2,195 overs, with the underdog hit rate against the spread being about 51.3%, 2,286 and 2,169 against the spread for underdogs. But last 7 days, we have seen the over rate be at about 54%, 182 unders to 156 unders. Meanwhile, the underdog hit rate more around about 51.8%, 175 and 163 against the spread. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Nate Hornung, better known as Shaggy Best, right here on Coast to Coast with myself, Greg H. Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at CBBAnalytics.com. That is CBBAnalytics, all one word, .com. For anyone that is new new to VSiN? Well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got Nate Hornung aboard, better known as Shaggy Bets. He does an incredible job over at Your Betting News as he is the handler of one Colby Marcio, doing a great job with the show Up Your Units and so much more. You're able to find write-ups, you're able to find appearances from him all throughout the week as this time of year he does a great job on the college basketball front, but it doesn't matter the sport. Baseball, football, college basketball. I'm sure that he's done a little bit of Olympics as well. He's a 5-tool handicapper when it comes to that. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter side checks at Shaggy_bets all together. And Nate, it's always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Hey, great to be here, Greg. Thanks for having me on. That's quite the intro. I like to take pride in what I can do, spread myself across a lot of sports, but college hoops is definitely my one true love.
Absolutely. And we've got ourselves just a lot of fun when it comes to it, as now we are less than 4 weeks away from Selection Sunday. And just how do you take a look at the landscape in college basketball? Because it certainly feels different than last year, but honestly, it feels a little bit more like it did when a few years ago UConn won the entire title when they were that top team, but it feels like everyone outside of them was very, very much nipping at their heels. And I still do think that Arizona, Michigan are probably your top two teams in the sport, but they've got upcoming massive tests here over the weekend with Arizona taking on Houston, with Michigan and Duke having a big battle. And I think that it's really going to be a defining week as to how the hierarchy of college basketball is laid out, because I feel like those tier 2 and tier 3 teams are just really good this year.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, Arizona, Michigan, like you said, kind of head and shoulders above the rest. But as we saw this week, they're certainly not invincible, as those Arizona Wildcats suffered their first 2 losses of the season. And, at Allen Fieldhouse against a very, very good Texas Tech team, those are forgivable losses in my eyes, but it doesn't get easier. Like you said, they got a rematch with BYU on Wednesday. They have to go to Houston on Saturday and still got to take on that Jayhawks team and play the Iowa State Cyclones later in the year. So, I mean, just in the Big 12, it's an absolute gauntlet for those Arizona Wildcats. Now, looking down the rankings a little bit, a team that's kind of been catching my eye and one that I think has really figured things out and turned a corner is actually the defending national champions. It's the Florida Gators. Todd Golden clearly reloaded with the transfer portal after last season's championship. Now, they had some hiccups going forward to start the year, couldn't really figure out the three-point shooting, but they are a very dangerous team right now and one that I would not like to fade at the moment.
Oh, I am right there with you, and I'm so glad that you bring them up because it feels like this year in college basketball is a little bit different with regards to the offensive dynamic than it has been in the past, because typically when it comes to March, it's a case where guard play wins, and no doubt about it, it's a bunch in Florida that has some solid guards, but they're built more around their front court. I would say Arizona has good guards with Jane Bradley and company, but they're a team that they look to pile drive the ball down low. If you're looking at a team that has only suffered 1 or 2 losses this year in Gonzaga, they're a team that doesn't necessarily have great guard play. They're looking to pound the ball down low. How much do you look at this year with a lot of the top teams really being in like the bottom 50 in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3 and looking to just pound the ball inside and win from within?
It's a little more of an old school approach, as you can say. In the era of Steph Curry, obviously people love the 3-ball, love jacking it up from deep. But yeah, they're going the more traditional route, really diving into their front courts, pounding the ball inside, just doing the fundamentals right, especially cleaning up the glass and dominating the rebound margin on both sides of the floor. So, come tourney time, it's going to be interesting to see. Arizona, unfortunately, a team that does struggle from beyond the arc. And, if they get down in a tournament game, they're not going to be able to jump back into it with a big run by lighting it up from deep. So that worries me a little bit going into tourney time. And I might be looking to avoid those teams, looking for someone a little more balanced going forward to cut down the nets in March.
Yep, I don't blame you there, as we do have our good friend Shaggy Betts, aka Nate Hornung, doing a great job over at Your Betting News, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I do think that it's a very interesting dynamic that we've got in college basketball right now. And one of those teams was North Carolina, deal with a little bit of injury to Caleb Wilson. You mentioned in passing that Arizona's going to have a tough test against Baylor. Got a little bit easier with Richie Saunders now being out for them, one of their top three scorers, a guy that shoots it well from three. And how do you take a look at those two teams in North Carolina and BYU suffering really big injuries? And if you want to go a little bit further, Ohio State with John Mobley now being out of the fold, as it felt like it was a week of attrition for a lot of good teams.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Caleb Wilson injury definitely hurts the Tar Heels, but I think the Richie Saunders blow hurts the BYU Cougars more. North Carolina, a team that's more spread out scoring wise. Sure, they let Caleb Wilson do his thing and go for plenty a game. But when you look at BYU, they have three guys that score the ball. AJ DeBonsa, Robbie Wright, and then Richie Saunders. Those guys typically account for 70% of the team's scoring. So you take one of those guys away due to injury, and that really shakes up the whole dynamic. So I think the pressure is definitely going to be on AJ DeBonsa to almost single-handedly lead this team going forward, especially on the offensive end. So as for the BYU Cougars, I think that's a very tough blow to bounce back from, and you're going to hopefully need to see their defense really step up to help them win those games, because they're not going to have that sharpshooter on the outside that can help get them there.
Yep, no question about it. I do think that it's going to be really interesting to take a look at them moving forward, and it is going to be fun to see what we get on Monday as well. Houston versus Iowa State. These are two top 10 teams in all of college basketball. I don't know if we're going to have any sort of predicaments with regards to top scorer in the game, whether or not he's going to be playing or not, but you know what? It's a line of 1.5 to 2.5 with Iowa State being the favorite, total of 134.5. We were just talking about it. Man, some of these tier 2 teams are really, really good. These are two teams that are right there that I think would really love to be able to announce themselves. Both teams have been, in my opinion, probably considered in tier 1 at some point this year as well. How do you take a look at this matchup? One that I think is amazing out there in the Big 12 to wrap up the night.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be phenomenal. And as we saw on Saturday at Hilton Coliseum, gets rocking. It is a clear home court advantage for those Cyclones, and I think it could help them on Monday against Big Bag Houston coming to town. Two teams that are just absolutely phenomenal defensively. Makes me lean towards the under immediately. 134.5. I know it's up a point from the opener at 133.5, so I'm not too eager to jump on that under right away. I'm hoping it maybe ticks up a couple more points and then maybe take a stab at 136 or 137 if it gets there. But I think this is a game Iowa State can win. I'm also not rushing to jump on them on the 1.5 or 2.5 because I know how good Houston is, especially defensively. So, I mean, if Iowa State shoots lights out like they certainly did on Saturday against the Jayhawks, I could see this being kind of an easy win for them. But obviously, the Cougars going to make it tough defensively. So I'm actually might be looking at the first half under, maybe try and just get in and out, betting on Houston not starting out as hot, betting on Iowa State not necessarily blowing the lights out of the gym first thing in the game. But this is a tough one to cap, in my opinion. It's going to be a phenomenal basketball game, and I'm really looking forward to it on Monday night.
Yep, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that with regards to the total as well, because immediately when you have these two great defensive teams, you do lean to the under, but how much you have to factor in the fact that this is probably going to be a close game, and if you have a team down by 4 or 5 points, that you get the late game fouls to where a under that it looks like is going to be in the bag just gets toasted by those last 60 seconds.
Oh, I have unfortunately had that happen many times already this season.
Yes.
So, yeah, definitely worried about that in the back of my mind. But yeah, I'm definitely not rushing to bet the over. Everything in me says under with these two defensive teams, but I'd like it to tick up a few more points before I hop on.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I do think that we need just a little bit more to be able to dive in on that over personally, just because I do have that fear of the late game fouls. And Iowa State, very good three-point shooting team this year, as well as Shaggy Betts, a.k.a. Nate Hornung, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. Certainly that's the most rambunctious game. And then the other top 25 team that is good to be in action, and I'm sure that they would love to be able to just announce themselves as perhaps the top team, if not a top 2, top 3 team in all of college basketball. That'd be Duke. Probably not going to have as much of an opportunity on Monday as they will over the weekend against Michigan, but Duke is right now a 20.5-point favorite. How do you take a look at both this game and Duke overall? Because it feels like with Duke, ever since John Shire has taken over, this goes beyond this year. They've been much more of a defensive team, and even though they're always super efficient on offense, they're not necessarily a team that's going to play super duper fast, and they play against a Syracuse team that began the season relatively solid on defense, but it does feel like it sort of went down the toilet bowl recently for the Orange.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You said it. I mean, this Duke team is no doubt talented. We've seen that with their big wins already this season, obviously. In my mind, they relied too much on freshmen, obviously. Cameron Boozer, a great player, absolutely incredibly basketball talented, but we've seen in years past that sometimes the lights are too bright for those young kids when it comes to tourney time. So as far as backing them in the tournament, I'm probably going to stay away, especially to go all the way just because of that inexperience factor maybe coming into play. Now, in regards to this game on Monday night, you said it, Syracuse, very good defensively in the first half of the season. It has come back down to earth a little bit, but I still like their defense in this game. I also like that they play very, very slow, much like this Duke Blue Devils team, very conservative, meticulous offensively, not trying to overdo it or play way too fast. I'll actually probably be looking to back this first half under. In a couple of games this year, Duke has started out very, very slow offensively in the first half. We saw that against Lipscomb. We saw that against Wake Forest. We even saw it a little bit this past Saturday against Clemson. Now, Clemson, a very slow team, a very good defensive team, certainly doesn't quite compare to Syracuse, but I've got faith in the Orange, at least, waking up for the first 10, 20 minutes of this game and kind of keeping Duke corralled or contained as best they can. So I'll probably be looking to back this first half under on Monday night.
And how much do you take a look at just sort of the familiarity factor this time of year as well? Because now we're starting to get into some matchups where we've got quite a few rematches, a few fewer in the power conferences, because now you've got like 20 billion teams in the Big Ten, the ACC, what have you. But now we're starting to get into that time of year where teams are playing each other for the second time. The scouting reports have been out all throughout the conference. I do think that makes it a little bit harder to be able to cover these monster numbers like Duke laying 20.5 points, especially when a team like a Syracuse, who we were just talking about, knows how to be able to slow things down, and their game just sort of is based around defense and being able to make the game, for lack of a better term, a slog.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, when it comes to these rematches, I definitely take a look at what the previous odds were. What was the spread in the opening game? What was the total, just to kind of give me a reference point as to what those numbers were earlier on in the season. Now, obviously, situations change, teams have changed, so you can take everything with a bit of a grain of salt, but especially in those rematches, I do typically like to lean under just because I think it's easier to make those defensive adjustments rather than offensively, because offensively, you still need the ball to go into the hoop. Defensively, you can change things up and lock down. Maybe it's a specific player, maybe it's a specific type of play that a team likes to run, and really focus the defensive attention on those guys or on those plays. So I typically lean under, especially in those second matchups, assuming the line's not crazy adjusted depending on whatever happened in the first matchup. But that's kind of where my mind's at. I just think it's easier to make those adjustments defensively than offensively.
Yep, I think so as well, and I do think that we are going to be in for some fun on Monday. Certainly, those are the biggest two games, but is there anything else that you're taking a look at? Because certainly, we've got the lower level action. We've got the MEAC, the SWAC, the Southland, and the Patriot League that typically take center stage on Monday, and then a few stray other games out there in the Sun Belt and the CAA. Anything else that you might be taking a look at for a bet on Monday?
Yeah, one game I'm looking at in the Patriot League, Colgate and Boston University, and I'll be back at the Raiders as a road favorite, laying the 1 point against Boston as it is right now. Colgate is a top 2 offense in the Patriot League. They're top 3 defensively in opponent EFG percentage and top 2 in defensive rebounding, all that in the conference. Boston, not good. Especially defensively, bottom 15 in the nation in adjusted
slow
defensive
and inefficient on defense, which blows my mind.
It's a horrible recipe, let me tell you that. They're also north of 315 in opponent EFG percentage, putting them in the bottom 50 in the country, but they've somehow won 4 straight. And, we love in the gambling world, we love saying a team is due, but I think if any team is due for a loss, it's absolutely this Boston Terriers team. So I'll be back in Colgate as a short road favorite on Monday against Boston.
Oh, we are in lockstep on that one. Boston U has shockingly been a really good three-point shooting team, but Colgate, 40th in the country in opponents' road three-point shooting percentage at 30.8%. So I absolutely love that one as well. Colgate has run the conference for so long, had a little bit of a fall off last year. I think that they're looking to try to re-announce themselves and say that the Patriot League still runs through them. So I love that play as well, and I always love getting you aboard, Nate. You do such a great job breaking down this great game of college basketball. I know you're doing a little bit of everything over there at Your Betting News, so love to get people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yep, you can find me 5 days a week on camera at the Betting News Twitch channel. You can find me on socials at Shaggy_bets, posting plays for all kinds of sports, college hoops, college football when it's in season, and plenty of soccer coverage as well. Definitely looking forward to the World Cup coming up this summer.
Absolutely. It is going to be a lot of fun. And our good friend Nate covers a little bit of everything and does so also well. So a big thanks to Nate for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some main shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Nate Hornung, better known as Shaggy Bets. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights and did so once again today. So big thanks to Nate for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GU._D1. We're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we'll go with the Sun Belt, the CAA, the WAC, the Big 12, and the ACC games. And then the games at the bottom are going to be the extra games. And that's actually most of the board because you get the MEAC, the SWAC, the Patriot League, the Southland. If we have any America East and Atlantic Sun games, those are going to be at the bottom as well. So let's get things started. 871, 872. Louisiana is going to be on the road against Old Dominion. Old Dominion between a 5.5 to a 6.5 point favorite. Totals between 135.5 to 136.5. Made a total of a 134.5. I like the under. Now it's an Old Dominion team has not been great with their defense to say the least. And for Louisiana, they're having all sorts of issues right now. Louisiana, honestly, not the world's worst defense. They're right now checking in 194th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Old Dominion is 235th, but these Louisiana games are just slogs. In terms of total possessions per game, 361st in the country. Old Dominion, a slightly up-tempo team at about 101st, and Old Dominion is not giving themselves second chances. They're outside the top 3 with regards to percentage of their missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound, which is a far cry from last year. And last year, this was a team that was awful with their three-point shooting, but they become respectable this year. Old Dominion shooting about 34.5% from three-point range. That goes down to 33.2% at home, but you've been able to get good production out of Jordan Battle, who's been able to fight his way to 13.5 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, stealing at per contest. He's your main three-point shooter at about 41%. Casey Shaw really doesn't bomb it from 3, but top scorer that slashes to the rim, 17 points, 4 boards per contest. Robert Davis, your top scorer from last year, is taking a fall off down to about 9.5 points per game, is dealt with injury, and Caleb Swanton Roger, lone guy on the roster, gives you over 5 rebounds per game, 7-footer, 5 rebounds per game, but he does also provide a block and a half per game. This is also an Old Dominion team that's one of the worst teams in the country in terms of getting their shot blocked, so they have not been able to flow a lot of clean possessions there, and Louisiana actually does a good job in terms of not getting their shots blocked, but they're just not really a good shooting team in general. They're outside the top 340 with regards to 2-point shooting percentage. You've got 2 double-figure scores. Jackson Oliveira gives you 11.5 points, 4 boards, pair of assists, and then Dorian Finster has been able to bomb it at about 37% from 3, 14.5 points per game, and Louisiana has actually become a halfway decent 3-point shooting team. They shoot about 33.6% from the outside. That's about country average, 202nd. They're about 225th with regards to free throw shooting percentage, and they don't have any way of getting themselves to the charity stripe. But here's the issue for Louisiana. They are just absolutely giving it up from three-point range. Right now for Louisiana, they are allowing teams to shoot from three-point range over 36.5%, 37.7% away from home. That is a bottom 50 mark in all of college basketball. In a game that I think is going to be very much slowed down, though it should have clean possessions. Old Dominion well outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. I do think that the Monarchs get the job done, and if Old Dominion needs to cover at the free throw line, they shoot about 72%. Old Dominion has been right around about 300th with their 2-point shooting percentage, but I do think that Louisiana gives up some good looks from 3, and Old Dominion does just enough in a slow game to get the job done. So about a total out of 134.5, like the under, and for Old Dominion, I'm willing to lay up to 6 with them. 873, 874, South Alabama is going to be on the road against Marshall, and Marshall is a 3.5 to a 4.5 point favorite. So on this game between 149.5 to 150.5, I said by total 142.5. I like the under. Got a South Alabama team that in terms of total possessions per game, they're right now checking in 265th, and prior to that overtime game that we saw over the weekend, they were more around about 290th. So if you look at regulation and regulation only, they're a bottom 100 team in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, it's a Marshall team that's going to be looking to push a little bit more tempo, 93rd in terms of total possessions per game, and the way to break this South Alabama defense is by being able to hit threes. So South Alabama is forcing opponents to take over 64% of their shots from three-point range. That is number 1 in the country. Marshall at home shoots 40.1% from three-point range. That is a top 30 mark in the country. And for South Alabama, they're actually looking to pile drive the ball inside. They're a top 100 team in terms of percentage of their points that come from 2-point range. Meanwhile, you got a Marshall team that's a top 75 team in the country with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. With the South Alabama team, you've had Chaz Harris be able to give you about 18 points, 4.5 assists per game. Adam Olson has been a 37.5% three-point shooter with about 16 points per game, but if this team is put on the free throw line, and South Alabama is actually one of the best teams in the country getting to the free throw line, they shoot 66.1%. That's a bottom 20 mark in all of college basketball. Now South Alabama keeps their possessions clean, top 10 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they're a top 90 team in terms of generating turnovers themselves, but I think that Marshall is going to be able to control this game despite the fact that their big man, Matthew Van Kamen, he stands right around about 7'4", multiple blocks per contest, 8+ rebounds per game. We've seen him last at a walking boot. He's missed each of the last 4 games. I think that he's going to be out here, but still have a trio of double-figure scorers and Noah Ashute along with Jalen Spear, Wyatt Fricks, all between 14.6 and 15 points per game. Spear is your main guy that spearheads the offense in terms of facilitation. 6 assists, a steal, 14.5 points per contest, and then you've been able to have Fricks be able to give you about 15 points per game from 3-point range. He's been able to shoot right in that mid to high 30s range at about 37%, and then Ashute, he throws in their 3.5 assists, 3.5 boards with his 14.6 points per game, and then the ancillary guys like a Landon Joseph shoots 40% for 3. Caleb Hollenbeck, he's been able to shoot 38% from the outside. Marshall, an okay free throw shooting team at about 73%, and South Alabama, they won't put you on the free throw line. Top 5 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, but with Marshall being able to do a good job with their interior defense and really controlling the tenor of games with being able to really bomb it from 3, I think that they get the job done against South Alabama. I think that's a bad matchup for South Alabama, so somehow line at 6.5, one to lay with Marshall, and I like the under. Semi-total at a 142.5, 875, 876. Syracuse is on the road against Duke. Duke is a 20.5 point favorite total on this game, 142.5 to 143.5. Me, my total of 142.5. So at the 143 plus, I'm in on the under. You got a Duke team that is a little bit of a slower team right now. 247th in terms of total possessions per game. Syracuse a little bit faster at 134th, but it's a Syracuse offense that has not been able to get anything going whatsoever. And their main kryptonite right now is the free throw line. They are shooting 63.8% of the free throw line, 363rd in all of college basketball. And their offense just in general has not been good. 161st in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It's a Duke team that has really been relying upon their interior play to be able to get their offense going, and they've been a rock solid offense, 18th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they're a top 10 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so a Syracuse team that's been hit or miss from 3-point that affects them. And then for Duke, they're 4th in the country with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, have not necessarily been the most supreme 3-point shooting team, so it's going to be interesting to see if you get a little bit more out of Isaiah Evans, who's been able to give you 13 to 14 points per game, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range. You've had Caleb Foster shoot about 38% from 3, but Duke as a whole, they shoot about 34.1% from the outside. Meanwhile, it's a Syracuse team that away from home, they're shooting just 32% from 3-point range. Now, I do think that Syracuse is going to be able to cover this number. I know that the defense does take quite a bit of a fall off when they're away from home rather than at home, but this has still been a team that's been able to just dial it up a little bit more there in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, even with having their shortcomings here in ACC play. They're 66th in the country. They allow about 9.8 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. You've got Nate Kings doing a nice job, give you about 11.5 points per game. Just has not been the same 3-point shooter that he was over at Oregon State, but it's starting to come back to him. 36.5% 40% is what he's shooting from the outside here in conference play, about 40%. And then Donnie Freeman, 17 points, 7 boards, a steal per contest. And for Syracuse, this has been a pretty solid team in terms of generating turnovers, and Duke has been as well. And that's a big reason why I do like this total under. I think that you're going to be costed of some clean possessions in this game, as Syracuse top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Duke has not in the past really done a lot of this. They're up to 66th in the country here. And for Duke, you've got Patrick Ngangba, who's been able to do a nice job in terms of giving this team like a block and a half per contest. He's been able to do a good job there. And then obviously the main attraction for this team is Cameron Boozer, and he's right now the odds-on favorite to be able to win the Wooden Award. 22.8 points, 4 assists, 9.8 rebounds per game. And then the number 2 facilitator outside of him is his brother Caden Boozer, who comes in off the bench for about 3 assists per game. It's a Duke team that doesn't put you on the free throw line much, so that actually helps Syracuse in this spot. And for Syracuse, I do think that they're going to be able to do just enough defensively to be able to keep this total under. You've been able to get double figures out of J.J. Sterling, and I do think that they hold within this very, very large number. I set my line at 18.5, so at the 20.5, I'm willing to take the points with Syracuse in on the under, made my total a 142.5. 877, 878, Drexel is going to be on the road against Stony Brook. And Stony Brook does find themselves as a mid-tier favorite here of 3.5 to 4.5 points. So on this game, 133 to 133.5. I set a total of a 126.5. I like the under. Drexel, one of the slowest teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball, 335th. Meanwhile, for Stony Brook, 256th. And neither of these teams are really executing well on offense. Stony Brook is 296th in the country with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. Much better at home. Drexel is about 265th. And let's say that you get into a pressure spot, you just can't rely upon this Drexel team at the free throw line. They are 355th in the country, shooting 65.6% at the free throw line. That goes down to 63.9% away from home, and that's a big reason why I did set Stony Brook here as a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number in. For this Stony Brook team, they've been able to do a relatively solid job as well in terms of guarding the inside. They've been a top 55 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Now Drexel is going to have the advantage on the glass. Drexel, a top 125 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Stony Brook as a whole, they're outside the top 240 with their rebound percentage. But that said, you've got Eric Pratt in this game giving you 19 points, 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists for Stony Brook. You've been able to get some surprising 3-point shooting out of Andrej Shikajic. Hopefully I said that correct. 9.5 points. He's been able to shoot 46% for 3. Richard Goods does give you the goods. Lone guy on the roster. It gives you over 5 rebounds per game, but 6 boards, 2.5 assists, 7.5 points, shoots 39% from 3-point range. Hot Rob Brown is able to give you 10.5 points per contest as well. And on the flip side for Drexel, it's really a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach. Shane Blakeney is right now the top scorer and your lone double figure scorer. 13.5 points, 5 boards, shoots 36% for 3. And then you've got a pair of guys from Victor Panoff, Eli Beard that combine to shoot about 38% for 3, and they both give you 9 to 9.2 points per game. You've had Kevin Vandendorst be able to step up with about 3 assists, a steal, 9.5 points per game, but with this Drexel team, just for one, not really doing the little things well with the free throw shooting, and two, them being a team that really just turns the ball over a little bit too much. They're a country average team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis at about 183rd, and it's not a Stony Brook team that's going to put you under a ton of duress, but right now for Drexel, 292nd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, Stony Brook being more around about 180th. I think that Stony Brook does the little things well to be able to get the job done in what I think is going to be a slug of a game. Semi-total 126.5. I like the under, and with Stony Brook, going to be willing to lay it, set them as a favorite of 4.5 points, 879, 880. You've got Abilene Christian on the road against Tarleton State. Tarleton State is a 1.5 point favorite, 135.5 to 136.5 is the total. Did set a total here of a 140.5. I like the over. This despite the fact that it is going to be a game where it's going to be very, very sloppy with regards to turnovers that you're going to be seeing, as Tarleton State actually leads the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Abilene Christian is third, and neither team is really taking care of the ball. Right now, for Tarleton State, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, they're 348th. Abilene Christian is 352nd, but this Tarleton State team, they're going to be able to win this game on the inside, in my opinion. They lead the country in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 2-point range. Abilene Christian, 287th in opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they are dead last out of 365 teams in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They allow teams to shoot 39.3% from 3-point range, and for Tarleton, they're going to be in a game that's going to be involving a heavy amount of fouls, and this has been a team that has actually done a nice job at the free throw line. Both of these teams are in the top 55 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. Tarleton State at home, they shoot 78.8% of the free throw line, overall 75.3% of the free throw line. If you look specifically at the home games, top 40 mark in the country. Meanwhile, Abilene Christian, they shoot 68.9% at the free throw line, and it is an Abilene Christian team that has has been just not able to execute on the inside themselves in games played away from home with their 2-point shooting percentage. They are well outside the top 320 in all of college basketball. Now, for Abilene Christian, with the injury to Dior Johnson, they might actually have the top scorer in this game. That would be one Mr. Brandon Hubbard, who's been able to spy 16 points, 2 steals, shoots 32% from 3. And then you do have Yanel Rivera shooting 36% from 3, 7.5 points, 2.5 assists per game. Rich Smith has been able to give you 5 assists per contest, and Abilene Christian overall shoots about 33% from 3, but just really bad on the interior. And then on the flip side of things, you've got a Tarleton State team that it's been a mash unit for them. I was mentioning the Dior Johnson injury. They've been dealing with Freddie Hicks being out with a little bit of an injury, and the Six Car has been one of the main guys to be able to step up with a lot of these injuries. He's been able to give you about 7 points, 3 boards, a block per contest, so he's a little bit of this and that sort of guy. And Cameron McDowell is right now dealing with a little bit of injury as well. He was one of their top scorers with about 14 points per contest as well, so you've had a lot of guys just go down with injury. But that said, I do think that Tarleton State, even with them having to go through so many different guys, they've still been able to find a little bit of mixing and matching. They've still been able to have a few guys be able to step up. Cade Douglas has been one of those guys in the interim. He comes over from UT Arlington, and he's been giving the team 20 points in the last 2 games, combined 20 points in the last 2 games. He's able to give you a little bit of 3-point shooting, career about 33% 3-point shooter for a Tarleton team that, even with all the injuries, even with the way that things have been just rough for them in general on that front, they've still been good in terms of generating turnovers. This was a game the last time that these 2 teams played, ironically enough, a few days ago, that landed 73-59. Abilene Christian got the win there, but for Abilene Christian, I do think that they're going to see a little bit of regression with their interior offense, and additionally with the Tarleton State team in that game. They went just 11 of 20 at the free throw line. I think that's going to be a little bit better there, and I do think that this game is going to be a little bit more up-tempo, and even though Tarleton is sloppy with the ball, 20 turnovers in the previous matchup, I think that comes down. So did set my line at 6.5, willing to lay with Tarleton State, and I'm in on the over. Set my total at 140.5. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before you hit the extra games. 881, 882. Houston is on the road against Iowa State. Iowa State is a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. Totals between 133.5 to 134.5, and I set a total of 136. I do like the over. Now, I set my line at 2. I'm mostly seeing 2.5, and in a game like this, I would rather take the 2.5 rather than lay the 1.5 personally, just because you know that this Houston defense is going to come to play. You know that Houston is going to get games really played on their terms, as they're outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. But here's a big reason why as well. Iowa State, they specialize in turnovers. Iowa State, top 10 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and top 10 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. You know what? Houston is number 1 in fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and they only have a turnover on 12% of their possessions away from home. That's actually better than their home mark. You got a guy, Milo Zuzan, who hasn't been the same 3-point shooter that he was last season, but is doing a good job in terms of leading the offense with 11 points, 4 assists per game, freeing things up for Kingston Flemings and Emmanuel Sharp, who have combined for 33 points per game. They combined to shoot about 37.5% from 3. Houston is giving up more second and third chances than they have in the past. They're outside the top 100 with regards to defensive rebound percentage. They've been outside the top 75 as well in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, but Chris Senek is giving you 9.5 points, 7.5 boards per game, and then you've got Joseph Tugler doing it all. Stealing half, blocking half per contest, 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, for Iowa State, this is a top 10 team in the country with their 3-point shooting percentage hovering right around about 39.8%. Milan Milosevic has been just incredible. 18.5 points, shoots 51.5% from 3, but they've been going a little bit colder recently. You've got great versatility with Joshua Jefferson, 17 points, 7.5 boards, 5 assists, stealing half per contest. Damon Lipsby, 2.3 steals per game, 13 points per contest, and then you got an ancillary guy in Jamarian Bateman who's been able to shoot 40% for 3, comes in off the bench, gives you a nice quality 6 points per game, but let's say that you get into a tight spot. Iowa State, they shoot 67.2% at the free throw line. That is a bottom 40 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, if Houston needs to knock down free throws, they're shooting more around 77.2% at the free throw line. So I do think that this Houston team is going to be able to hold in there, and I do think that this game is close enough for late game fouls that push you over. If you didn't have the late game fouls, I would certainly be in on the under, but I think that this is going to be a tight nip and tuck game, so I'm liking the over. I set my total at 136, and I set my line at 2, so taking the 2.5 2.5 here with Houston, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-511, 306-512. You've got Southeast Louisiana hitting the road. They're facing up against East Texas A&M. East Texas A&M finds themselves as a slim favorite here of 1 to 1.5 points. 133.5 to 134.5 is the total. Made a total of 133.5. I do like the under. Southeast Louisiana is pushing no tempo whatsoever. 334th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. East Texas A&M, not the slowest team in the world, 167, so a very mid-tempo team. Neither of these teams are very good with their shooting whatsoever. If you find yourself in a pressure spot, East Texas A&M, 275th in the country with their free throw shooting percentage. Southeast Louisiana, 305th at 68.5%. That goes down to 67.9% when they're away from home. Both of these offenses have just been deplorable this year. Right now for Southeast Louisiana, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 333rd. They are shooting less than 29% from three-point range. That's a bottom 15 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for East Texas A&M, 344th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But East Texas A&M and also Southeast Louisiana have been relatively solid teams in terms of generating turnovers. Now, East Texas A&M not taking care of the ball. They're 340th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Southeast Louisiana very much in lockstep with them at 316th. And I do think that there's going to be a lot of dead possessions because Southeast Louisiana, to their credit, 59th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. East Texas A&M more around 156th, but I do think that GNI Hunt and his experience is going to help out East Texas A&M in this game. He was actually so old that he was on that Elite 8 team of Oregon State way back in the day. He's been supplying you with about 10.5 points, 4 boards, 4.8 assists per game, and Rodney Harrison is going to be the best scorer in this game, 15 points per contest, only shoots about 32% from three-point range. It's on an offense that's going to knock your socks off, but at the same time, for this East Texas A&M team, they have been a top 200 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and for Southeast Louisiana, getting absolutely nothing going from the outside whatsoever, as you've got Isaiah Gaines and Jeremy Alizi as your lone double-figure scorers. They combine for 2 steals and 2 blocks per contest, so combined about 21.5 points per game, but they also shoot a combined 13.5% from three-point range. Makai Miles does shoot 39.5% from 3, 8.3 points per game, but just not a lot of offense here to be had for Southeast Louisiana. And they're also the lesser of the two teams at the free throw line as well. So I think that you get a low-scoring slog. I'm in on the under semi-total at 133.5, and with East Texas A&M, made them the 1.5 point favorite. Want to lay 1 and not a half a point more with them. 306-513, 306-514. Colgate is on the road against Boston U. Boston U is an underdog of 1 to 2.5 points on this game. It is 142.5 to 143.5. I like Colgate for a minty fresh cover. I set them as a 6-point favorite. It's a Colgate team that's been solid on offense, 135th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Boston U is actually a little bit more efficient on the offensive side of things. They've been 77th in the country, but this is a Boston U team that we talked about it with our good friend Shaggy Betts. Man, are they bad on defense. 342nd in points allowed on a per possession basis at home. Now, Boston U, really good three-point shooting team. 12th in the country, 38.4% from three-point. That goes above 40% at home, but Colgate, they're allowing teams to shoot just 30.8% from three-point range away from home. Colgate, 84th in terms of two-point shooting percentage away from home as well, and Boston U is 301st in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage away from home as well. So I think that Colgate is going to be able to find a way to be able to get the job done. I absolutely love what Jalen Cox has been able to bring to the table for this team, as right now for Colgate, he's been able to supply you with about 17 points, 5 boards, 5.5 assists, and he shoots 40% from 3. Andrew Alacano has been able to shoot about 40% from 3, 15 points, 7 boards, 3.5 assists per game. Just really good versatility for a Colgate team that does a nice job taking care of the ball. Top 100 team, there's a few turnovers on a per possession basis. They don't get to the free throw line whatsoever, but I think they've been able to do a solid job with regards to just holding up defensively away from home. Meanwhile, you've got a Boston U team that has Michael Aaron McNair shooting 46% for 3 with 17 points per game. Chance Gladen has been able to give you about 14 points. In the pressure spot, he shoots 88% of the free throw line, and then Sam Hughes has been able to shoot 39% for 3, 9.5 points per contest. So these guys have been able to do a relatively rock-solid job there. But for Boston U, being as slow as they are, outside the top 310 in terms of total possessions per game, and being as ghastly on defense as they are, it's just rather shocking to say the least. And with Colgate being able to guard the arc, I think that that's enough for them to be able to get the job done here. Set Colgate as a 6-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, and just the inefficiency of Boston U on defense, I think gets you the over. Semi-total 144, so I'm in on the over. 306-515, 306-516. Prairie View is going to be playing us to Grambling. Grambling is a 2.5 point road favorite. Total on scheme 149.5 to 151.5. Made Prairie View the 2-point favorite. I like them on the money line. Both of these teams are going to be looking to generate turnovers. As for this Grambling team, they have been tremendous. 29th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis generated away from home. Prairie View overall 36th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis on defense, but Prairie View is taking much better care of the ball. 146th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Grambling 357th, and this is going to be a game that is going to be involving a lot of free throws. Grambling 318th in free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. Prairie View is 361st, but Grambling, they shoot about 72.5% at the free throw line. Country average 172nd. Prairie View is very solid at the free throw line. 74th, they shoot 75.4% at the free throw line, and the best scorer in this game does belong to Prairie View, as Teron Joseph, 20.5 points per game. Not the greatest three-point shooter, but just finds a way to be able to get buckets, for lack of a better term. Corey Wells does a very good job down low with about 13 points, 6 boards, gives you about a steal per contest as well. Lance Williams has been a nice mixer and shaker, shooting 41.5% from three. Prairie View shooting about 33% from three-point range, neither here nor there, and Prairie View is typically a team that just absolutely gets blasted down low, and I'm not going to say that their interior defense has been anything magnificent or anything like that, but it's much better than it has been in past years. Right now for Prairie View, in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, you're checking at about 240th in all of college basketball. Grambling, meanwhile, they've been a top 150 team with this regard, but they allow opponents to shoot 42% from two-point range at home. That goes up to 55.5% away from home. Away from home, they fall well outside the top 250 with this regard. And for Grambling, you've got Roderick Coffey, who's been grinding very hard for this team, as right now he's supplying about 11 points, 4.5 boards, 4 assists, shoots over 40% from three-point range, so gives the team a little bit of everything. But Grambling, they only shoot about 31.5% from three-point range. They've been about 200th in the country with their two-point shooting percentage, so they've been neither here nor there. They're the much better rebounding team. Prairie View back outside the top 300 in terms of their rebound percentage, but that said, with Grambling just having so many issues in terms of taking care of the ball, even with them being able to generate the turnovers that they do, I think that Prairie View gets the job done. Now, it is a game that I think that Prairie View is going to be looking to push a lot of tempo in. They're 8th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but I do think that the dead possessions cost you an over, so I did set a total of 150 here at the 151.5, like the under, and Prairie View on the money line. 306.517, 306.518. Norfolk State is going to be on the road against Maryland Eastern Shore, and the Shore finds themselves as a home underdog of 1.5 points. 136.5 is the total. I set a total here for a 131. I'm going to be in on the under, as neither of these teams have been able to do a very good job on offense. Maryland Eastern Shore is playing very slowly, 330th in terms of total possessions per game. Norfolk State has actually bumped up their tempo a little bit, not to say that they're playing at warp speed, but 174th, that's about country average in terms of total possessions per game, but neither team is executing on offense. Norfolk State 313th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Maryland Eastern Shore is 359th, and Maryland Eastern Shore home games involve a whole bunch of turnovers. They're 6th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis at home, and out of 365 Division I teams, 365th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis in terms of their offense. Now, Norfolk State is going to have the best two scorers in this game. Anthony McComb is able to give you 16.5 points, drains 37% of his threes, 4.5 rebounds per game. Elijah Jamison, 3 boards, 3 assists, 15 points, shoots about 33% per three. And Devin Ellis, all of a sudden shooting 38.5% from three-point range as well. But this Maryland Eastern Shore team has been able to do a relatively respectable job on defense. I'm not going to call them amazing or anything like that, but they're a top 200 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. In terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, they allow teams to shoot 29.7% from three-point range at home. That's a top 75 mark in the country. Meanwhile, it is a Norfolk State team that has been really good with their three-point shooting defense. They're actually 30th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. So I think that you're going to get a nice hearty under here. But for Maryland Eastern Shore, you've been able to have Joseph Lusardo be able to pick it up for this team. He and Zion Oblana are combining for about 19.8 points per game, and Lucardo shoots 39% from three-point range. This Maryland Eastern Shore team that shoots 29.9% from the outside. That is a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. They've been a top 250 team with their two-point shooting percentage. Maryland Eastern Shore honestly not getting completely blasted on the glass or outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage, but Oblana has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. They're not allowing a lot of second and third chances, and they themselves aren't going to give themselves a lot of second and third chances either. But for this Maryland Eastern Shore team in a pressure spot, they do shoot about 71.5% at the free throw line. For Norfolk State, they've had a little bit of a difficulty in terms of taking care of the balls themselves. This is a Norfolk State team as well outside the top 270 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, and with them shooting just 67.8% at the free throw line. I do think that this Maryland Eastern Shore team finds a way at home to be able to get the job done, so I did set a line of 1 with Norfolk State being the favorite. Here at 1.5, 2, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Maryland Eastern Shore. Pretty much this was going to be a game where I was going to be falling on the side of the underdog, so I'm going to take the points but not the money line with Maryland Eastern Eastern Shore because, again, being dead last in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis is not great, but I am going to be willing to take those points with Maryland Eastern Shore, and I'm going to be in on the under. 306-519, 306-520. NC Central is going to be playing us to Morgan State. Morgan State is a 5.5 point underdog. Total on this game, 153.5 to 154.5, and I said Morgan State is a 1 point favorite. I like them outright on the money line for NC Central. This team is one that very much gambles for turnovers, and they've done a good job in terms of generating turnovers at home. Currently 12th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but 332nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 329th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and right now for this NC Central team, you've only got really two guys that be able to step up for this offense in terms of scoring. Now, you've got another guy that does a nice job in terms of doling it out in Deontay Johnson, about 7 points, 4 boards, 6 assists per game, and then throws in there 2.5 steals per game, but Corey Carvey, 13.5 points. He gives you about 6 rebounds, a steal per game, and then Gage Lattimore, 17.5 points, shoots 37% from 3. Lone 2 guys on the roster that average over 8.7 points per game. It's a NC Central team that's outside the top 275 in terms of both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. And for Morgan State, this team in conference play and conference play only, second in the conference in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis and per game basis when they're at home. Now, Morgan State is a team that has had difficulties with their 2-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 300 with that regard, and they look to pile drive the ball inside. They're a top 70 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the arc, but now they get to face an NC Central team that's outside the top 300 with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. Alfred Worrell, 17.5 points, shoots 38% from 3. Rob Lawson, he does not really bomb it from 3, but he does give you about 13 points, 4.5 assists per game, and then Elijah Davis is thrown in there, 5.5 assists per game as well. So a nice two-headed monster in terms of facilitation. It's an NC Central team that this should come as no shock to you, but they have really struggled on the glass, and this is a Morgan State team that is doing a nice job in terms of guarding the arc. They're 83rd in the country in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. In conference play, teams are only shooting 25.5% from 3-point range. I certainly do think that we're going to see a bit of regression there, but for NC Central, 359th in terms of their defensive rebound percentage at home. Teams are grabbing about 37.9% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. Not to say that Morgan State has been magical with regards to their rebounding or anything like that. They're about 319th in the country with regards to their defensive rebound percentage as well, but a much more respectable team on the glass. You've been able to have a guy in Christian Meeks be able to go down low to be able to give you about 5.5 boards, 6.5 points per game. Walter Peggs has been able to throw in their 8 points per game, still with a little bit of injury, but should be good to go here. And do think that Morgan State does find a way to get the job done as they shoot 73.5% at the free throw line. That's making a pressure spot, and with them taking care of the ball, I think that they take care of the game. So Morgan State is a 1-point favorite. I'm in on them on the money line. Made a draw of 153, so at the 153.5 plus, I like the under. You've got 306-521, 306-522. Bethune Cookman is going to be on the road against Jackson State, and Jackson State is a home underdog here of 5.5 points, 148.5 to 149.5 is the total. And for Bethune Cookman, I did make them a favorite of 6.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Bethune Cookman. They've actually been your top defense here in SWAC play overall for the season. They're about 180th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but for Bethune Cookman, their defensive efficiency falls outside the top 255 away from home. They allow 20.1 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, and they are now dealing with an injury to Dr. Bradley, who was back for 8 games, and now he's been out of the fold for the last few, but still have Ontario Morris, who I still think that he's got another gear to his game. 11 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. I expected a little bit more out of him, but Jacoby Edie shoots 40% for 3, 17.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. Daniel Ruzon has been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game for this Bethune Cookman team. The reason why they've been able to really run things here in the SWAC has been their interior play. Number 1 in the conference with their 2-point shooting percentage, number 1 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well, but Jackson State all of a sudden is averaging 78.5 points per game in conference play. If you look overall for the season, they are a team that checks in well outside the top 320 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. That goes up to 150th in their home games, and you've got Deshaun Ruffin, the top scorer in this game, 23.5 points, 5.5 assists, shoots 33% from 3-point range. Dorian McMillan, Jamie Mitchell have been able to come in for 26 points per game. Between the two of them, you get 9.2 rebounds per game, and Dejounte Thomas, who comes over from Southern, he's been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, so they've done a much better job with that regard. Here's the issue though. They're still about 355th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Mike Williams, one of their main guards, still deal with a little bit of an injury as well. I think that this is going to be a little bit more of an up and down game with Bethune Cookman cooking up their defense, but still being very efficient on offense, and myself thinking that you're going to get a little bit more out of Ontario Morris moving forward. I think that Bethune Cookman gets the job done in a nice high-scoring expose between two teams that are in the top 70 in terms of total possessions per game. Jackson State more around about 56. Bethune Cookman hovering in that neighborhood about 64, 65th. So circumstance where I'm going to be in on the over. I did set my total here at a 154.5, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 6 here with Bethune Cookman. 306-523, 306-524. You've got Coppin State. They're going to be on the road against South Carolina State. South Carolina State, a 4.5 to a 5.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 143.5 to 144.5. Made a total of a 146.5. I do like the over. You've got a pair of teams that are looking to play at a brisk pace, not necessarily a just absolutely gun-it pace. 104th in the country for South Carolina State in terms of total possessions per game. Coppin State, 177th. These are two absolutely horrible defenses, by the way. For Coppin State, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 358th, and South Carolina State is 348th. The lone saving grace that you've got for the South Carolina State team is that they're actually a relatively good three-point shooting team. They shoot 36.7% from three-point range at home. Due to turnovers, they are outside the top 350 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Coppin State is outside the top 360 with that regard, and Coppin State does not have a single double-figure scorer on their team. Meanwhile, you've got two for South Carolina State. Jaden Johnson, Owen Bronson, they combine to shoot about 36% from three-point range between the two of them. You're getting about 24 points per game, and then Noah Treadwell is a mid-33 point shooter, 8.5 points per game. They've had a lot of injuries with James Merrill, Cameron Clark, pair of guys that give you between 7.5 to 8 points per game, and Clark has really become one of your top rebounders with 5.3 rebounds per game. They were both missing for 5+ games this season. Having them back has helped out the team a little bit. Now, South Carolina State still well outside the top 300 with regards to their own rebound percentage, and they shoot 63.5% at the free throw line. Meanwhile, you've got a Coppin State team that they just flat out can't shoot either. They shoot 67.5% of the free throw line, and they're outside the top 330 with their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages on offense, but on defense, they're outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages, with teams shooting 38.6% from 3-point range against them. Not great, to say the least. You've got Demetri Hall coming back from injury. He's your top scorer with 9.5 points per game. Lone guy in the roster, averaging over 7.6 per game, as you've got Cleo Horton giving you 37.8% 3-point shooting with those 7.6 points per game, but man, it's rough to say the least. Outside of Hall, you've got Taj Thiwat, who's been able to give you 4.7 rebounds per game. Lone other guy on the roster that gives you over 3.8 rebounds per game, and he's been dealing with a little bit of injury recently, but should be good to go in this game for Coppin State. It's just all sorts of brutal, both on offense and on defense. I do think they get enough possessions for the over, so I did set a total of a 146.5. I like the over, and I think that South Carolina State gets the job done. Wanted to lay up to 8 with them, made them an 8.5 point favorite. 306-525, 306-526. Howard is going to be on the road against Delaware St, and Delhi State finds themselves as an 11.5 point home underdog. So on this game is 132.5, and I'm in on another under. I set my total at a 130.5. Delaware State is actually your top under team in all of college basketball, and it's going to make sense because Delaware State has actually been a relatively solid defense in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis at home. They're a top 10 team in all of college basketball, and if you look at them just in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they actually are a top 150 defense. Now, it's a Delaware State team, and it's also getting blasted on the glass. They're 339th in the country in terms of overall rebound percentage. Howard has actually become a really good rebounding team, 113th in the country with regards to their overall rebound percentage, and the way that this Howard team has been guarding away from home is actually something to behold. They're overall 22nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, specifically in games away from home. That ascends into the top 15 in the country. Now, I did only set Howard as a 10.5 point favorite because I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slow down slog of a game. Howard has been a mid-tempo team, about 147th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Delaware State is 307th, but for Howard, they've also had a very difficult time in terms of taking care of the ball outside the top 310 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and they're outside the top 270 with their 2-point shooting percentage. They have by far the best player in this game, Bryce Harris, 17.5 points, 7 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots 35.5% for 3. Cam Gill's now shooting 36.5% for 3, and Osa Okoji, he doesn't take a lot of threes, but on the ones that he takes, he shoots 45% from 3-point range, and getting back Cedric Taylor with his 6.5 rebounds per game. That's elevated the team down low in Delaware State on a 365 Division I teams. Depending upon the day, they're either 364th or 365th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 335 in terms of both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but again, doing a really good job in terms of being able to guard the perimeter. They've been one of the best teams in terms of generating turnovers in the country, and you've got the Ponce James, who's been able to give you 14.2 points per game, dealt with a little bit of injury. He's back for the team, lone double-figure scorer. Miles Webb down low has been able to give you about 6 rebounds, 9.5 points per game. These are pretty much the lone two guys on the roster that average above 8+ points per game, but I think that this is going to be a very sloppy game with a ton of turnovers, and that does just enough for Delaware State to hold in there. Set my line at 10.5, so at 11+, take the points with Delaware State. I like the under. Set my total at a 130.5. 3 is 6-5-27, 3 is 6-5-28. Wagner is on the road against Long Island. Long Island is a 10 to a 10.5 point favorite. So it's game 134.5 to 135.5. And with a Wagner, I did set them as a underdog of 9.5 points. So 10 plus does become my buy point because I do think that the Wagner 3-point shooting is going to be able to keep them in it. In games played away from home, Wagner is a top 20 team in the country with their 3-point shooting percentage at 39.5%. That is 10th in the country. Meanwhile, Long Island at home has been a good 3-point shooting team at 37.7%. That is 61st in the country, and there's plenty of second chances in Long Island home games, as Long Island 254th in the country with regards to defensive rebound percentage, but they also rebound 34.6% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is 31st in all of college basketball. Wagner has been about 275th in the country, by the way, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Wagner has been really playing that slow, controlled style. They're under an interim coaching regime, and at first they were playing with a little bit more tempo. They have slowed it down once again to about 301st in terms of total possessions per game. Long Island, a bit more of a mid-tempo team, 195th in terms of total possessions per game. And for Wagner, you only have one double-figure scorer. That'd be Nick Jones, 15 points, about 2.5 assists, 2 steals per game, but he really doesn't shoot it well from three. It's been the ancillary guys that have been able to step it up. Benil Basile has been able to give you about 8.5 points, 6 rebounds, shoots 38.5% from three. Eduardo Placer shoots about 38.5% from the outside, and it's a Wagner team that is outside the top 200 with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and they don't put you under duress. That's big because Long Island is outside the top 315 in terms of their ball security. They turn the ball over about 13.5 times per game, and in a nip and tuck spot, if Long Island needs to cover at the free throw line, 65.6%. That's a bigger reason why I can't lay this number, but you do have a trio of guys that give you at least 13.5 points per game. Greg Gordon, 13.5 points. He doesn't shoot it well from three at 25%, but 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists, steal 1.5 per contest. Jamal Fuller, 15.5 points per game. He's your main 3-point shooter at 42% from the outside, and then Malachi Davis just does it all. 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, steal per contest, 14.5 points per game, and I do think that this is going to be a game that sees quite a few made threes, even with Long Island being a top 100 team with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Set a total here of a 143.5. I like the over, and I'm going to be willing to take 10 plus here with Wagner. 3 of 6-5-29, 3 of 6-5-30. Mississippi Valley State is on the road against Alabama State. Alabama State is a favorite of 15.5 points, 140 to 140.5 is a total. Set a total of 142.5. I like the over. Both of these teams are going to be looking to push quite a bit of tempo for Alabama State in terms of total possessions per game. This team is 73rd in all of college basketball. Mississippi Valley State about 120th in terms of total possessions per game, and Mississippi Valley State, the defense is not great, 361st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Alabama State is one of those classic gamble for turnover sort of teams. They are 240th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they are 9th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis in their home games, and it's a Mississippi Valley State team that is a bottom 10 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. It's a Mississippi Valley State team that, I mean, really, if you can find what this team is doing right, you let me know, because there's not a whole heck of a lot of it for Mississippi Valley State. They are also outside the top 360 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and interestingly, Mississippi Valley State actually has a top scorer in this game. That would be Michael James, 21.5 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shoots 34.5% from three-point range, and then you've had Daniel Mayfield be able to chip in there about 6.5 rebounds per game. Outside these two guys, you haven't gotten much. Lamont Sams is right now dealing with injury, so Patrick Bunch is like your lone other guy that gives you over 6 points per game with about 8 points per contest, but it is a Mississippi Valley State team that's outside the top 345 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and Alabama State is actually averaging 1.6 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. They shoot about 27.5% from 3-point range at home compared to over 33% away from home. I think that irons out a little bit more. They've been dealing with a little bit of injury with Asjon Anderson being out the full for a few games, but he's back. Has been limited in the last few games, but I think they'll be closer to 100% here. He and Micah Simpson combined for about 31 points per game, and Simpson has been able to shoot 35% per 3-point range. Then you've been able to have Ja'Carrius Stanback give you a pair of blocks, a steal, 5.5 boards per game down low. Alabama State, I think, is going to be able to really control this game down low, as they are actually a very solid team in terms of giving themselves second and third chances, and this should come as no shock to you whatsoever. Mississippi Valley State, one of the worst rebounding teams in all of college basketball as well. Right now for Mississippi Valley State, 348th in the country in terms of percentage of missed shots that become an offensive rebound for opponents, and this is an Alabama State team that is a top 115 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. So I think that Alabama State is going to be able to run this game. I set my line at a 20.5. I'm willing to lay with Alabama State, and on the over, set my total 142.5. 306, 531, 306, 532. Incarnate plays us to New Orleans. New Orleans is a underdog here of 1 to 1.5 points. 156 to 156.5 is the total. Made a total of 153. I'm in on the under, mainly because I just think they get too many, shall we say, dead possessions for the over. It's going to be a bit of a tempo war. New Orleans 72nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Incarnate is 313th. And for Incarnate, this team has been a very solid team in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. Top 115 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots. That results in an offensive rebound. And New Orleans is even better at 74th, as you've got MJ Thomas, who's been able to give you a hair over 11 points, about 8 rebounds per game. And then Churchill Avis has been a little bit more of a shot blocker for this team. 8.5 points, 5.5 boards. He gives you about 2 blocks per game. And then you've got 2 main guards for this New Orleans team with Colton Benson, 16 points, shoots 92% of the free throw line, 38% per 3. And then Jacavian Buckley, main facilitator, 2 steals, 5 boards, 5.2 assists, 14.5 points per game. But for New Orleans, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, bottom 20 team in the country. They're hovering right around about 300th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense. And that's a big reason why I do have to roll with Incarnate. I did set them as a 3-point favorite. Now, New Orleans is a top 30 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis, and they do rank in the top 100 with their free throw shooting percentage as well, so that'll help them out a little bit. And this is an Incarnate team that is one of the most frequent foul teams in all of college basketball as well. But that said, for Incarnate, you've got a pair of guys in Taj Savetsky, Davion Bailey in the backcourt. They combine for 35.4 points per game between the two of them, shoot 37.5% per 3, and then the versatility of Jordan Pike, 13 points, 5 boards. He shoots 40% per 3 as rock solid. Harold Woods has been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. It's an Incarnate team that's going to give up a lot on the inside. They're about 300th in the country with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and their own 2-point shooting percentage has been very, very shaky. But this is an Incarnate team that absolutely lights you up from 3-point range. They shoot 38.4% from 3-point range at home. That is a top 60 mark in all of college basketball. And this is a New Orleans team that is going to give up some good, clean looks. And for New Orleans, you look at their own 2-point shooting percentage, it's outside the top 250 in all of college basketball. They are allowing teams to only shoot about 33% from 3-point range. They've not been too bad there. So I do like the under. I set my total 153, especially with Incarnate playing as slowly as they do. But I do think that Incarnate does a good job winning that turnover battle to get the job done. So I'm willing to lay the number here, set Incarnate as a 3-point favorite. 306, 533, 306, 534. McNeese is going to be on the road against Northwestern St. Northwestern St, home underdogs of 12.5 to 13.5 points. 137.5 is the total. And made my line an 11.5. So I'm going to be willing to take the points here with Northwestern St. It's a Northwestern St team that's going to be very content to slow this game down. They are 317th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. This McNeese team is a team that's pretty slow as well at 283rd. And for McNeese, they've got very demonstrative home and road splits with their 3-point shooting. They shoot 38.9% from 3-point range at home. That's a top 50 mark in the country. 28.2% in a road/neutral venue. I recognize that you don't shoot it quite the same when you're away from home, but that is outside the top 320 in all of college basketball. Northwestern St is going to get absolutely plowed on the glass. They're outside the top 300 with regards to their overall rebound percentage, but Willie Williams has been able to give you 9.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Micah Thomas is supplying 17 points. He shoots 39.5% from 3-point range. Is Northwestern St an amazing 3-point shooting team? No, but they're a competent 3-point shooting team. At home, they shoot about 35.5% from 3-point range. Izzy Miles shoots 42% for 3 with his 7 points per game. Chris Mabaru has been able to give you about 7.5 points, 3.5 boards. He and Justin Redmond both shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Now, Northwestern St outside the top 270 with their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, and they're outside the top 300 with their own opponent's 3-point shooting percentage as well. But they've been a country average team in terms of generating turnovers. McNeese, I think, is going to do a nice job in terms of being able to put the clamps down on defense as well, as this is a team that ranks in the top 2 in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Larry Johnson, no, not the running back, 16.5 points, 5 boards. He's only shooting about 42% for 3, but Tyson Archie, Javon Garcia combined to shoot about 37.7% for 3, 25 points per game between the two of them. Kawari Duel, not necessarily the most prolific scorer, but 8.5 points, 4.5 assists, steal and half per contest. Like what he brings to the table, but with this McNeese team not being the same 3-point shooting team away from home, they're a great team in terms of taking care of the ball. They're a top 50 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but this also being a bunch that has had their issues along the outside. I do think that that's going to be just enough for Northwestern St to remain lively in a lower tempo game, but I do think that the way that this Northwestern St team gives it up from 3, I think that McNeese sees a bit of positivity with that road 3-point shooting, seeing between 137 to 137.5 with the total. Me, my total 137.5. So 137 or less in on the over, and taking the place with Northwestern St made them an 11.5 point dog. 36-535, 36-536. Lamar is going to be on the road against UT Rio Grande Valley. The Vaqueros of UT Rio Grande Valley, 5.5 to 6.5 point favorites. 141.5 to 142 is the total. And for Lamar, I made them an underdog of 8 points. I'm going to be one lay. I have to think that we're going to see a little bit of an ironing out with the home and road splits of this Grand Valley team, because you look at UT Rio Grande Valley and they are absolute flamethrowers from 3-point range away from home. Away from home, they are shooting 40.4% from 3. That is 5th in the country. They shoot 30.3% from 3-point range at home. That's outside the top 315. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. You look at this team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're overall 191st, but they are, and I'm not even kidding here, scoring 9.7 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home. I think that you're going to get between A and B. Lamar, meanwhile, they're about 235th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Both of these teams are relatively slow. Lamar 306th in terms of total possessions per game. UT Rio Grande Valley more around about 251st, so don't think they get a ton of tempo here. Set my total at 140, so I'm going to be in on the under. But for this Grand Valley team, well, their 3-point shooting has been rough at home. Their 3-point shooting defense has been anything but that. They are allowing opponents to shoot 27.8% from 3-point range at home. That is a top 25 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Lamar, you do have some relatively good versatility. Andrew Holyfield, he's a guy that stands right around about 6'10". He's done a tremendous job in shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, 12.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. And then Hot Rob Lee, 16.5 points, shoots 43.5% from 3-point range. This is a Lamar team that has been outside the top 3 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, but they're more of a country average team with their 3-point shooting percentage. Where the team has really been able to thrive is by being able to get second and third chances. They're pulling in their darn near 13 offensive rebounds per game. If you look at percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound, they are 44th in all of college basketball. Grand Valley, not as strong on the glass. They're about 236th in terms of being able to rebound their misses, but for Grand Valley, they're okay in terms of not allowing a lot of second and third chances. 192nd in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Lamar is more around about 67th, but Lamar also a group that they give it up from 3-point range. They are allowing teams to shoot about 36% from 3, hovering right around about 300th in all of college basketball. And it's been a Lamar team that's been outside the top 225 with regards to their own ball security. Meanwhile, if you look at this Grand Valley team, it has been one that has been a little bit up and down with regards to their own ball security, as always, right? Has been falling off a little bit at the guard spot. They're outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but also a top 125 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. In a pressure spot, Grand Valley shoots 75.5% free throw line, top 80 mark in the country. And then you have a quartet of guys, Jalen Washington, Corey Cotton, Phil Brankovic, Marvin McGee, that all give between 9.9 and 13.3 points per game, with having McGee shoot 42% for 3, 5 rebounds per game. Cotton gives you about 5 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots 39.5% for 3. Brankovic has been able to throw in there about 4 boards per contest. Do think that Grand Valley is able to iron out those home and road splits and get the job done. I'm going to be in on the under, so I total 140, and for Grand Valley, I'm going to be wanting to lay the number, set them as an 8-point favorite. 306, 537, 306, 538. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin is on the road against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi, home underdog of 4.5 points, 138.5 to 139 is the total. I'm back in on Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin. Not as big of a differential as I've had in previous games. I set this at 5, but Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, number 1 team in the country in terms of cover percentage, and one of the best defensive teams of the country, 9th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis and a roadside shoot score venue. They are going to have a very nice, sizable advantage here on the glass. As for Stephen F. Austin, right now they're 64th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. If you look at percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound, 67th in the country, overall top 50 team with regards to that rebound percentage. And for this Corpus Christi team, it's a very interesting team in that they're a really good defensive team as well. 64th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not a team that's really going to give themselves a lot of second and third chances, but this is a pair of teams that are absolutely awful at the free throw line if it comes down to it. For this Corpus Christi team at the free throw line, right now they're shooting a nice hearty 66.9%, 344th in the country. Stephen F. Austin, 67.5%, that's 329th. Interestingly, Stephen F. Austin shoots 71.3% though away from home, and I'm not going to call it amazing or anything like that, but it's a little bit better. And for Stephen F. Austin, this team does a great job in terms of taking care of the ball, and that's a forte of Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi is right now a top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but Stephen F. Austin, 9.5 turnovers per game, top 30 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they've got the top scorer in this game with Thompson giving you 18.5 points, 4.3 assists per contest, and then you've got Narat Kurvanic, who's been able to give you 10 points, shoots 44% from 3. Cam Burton now shooting 44% from the outside, and Lateef Patrick is able to give you about 14.5 points per game. Jared Colonel should be able to control things on those. He, Krishan Christmas, both give you 7.2 rebounds per game. Colonel about 2.5 blocks per game, and then for the Texas A&M Corpus Christi team, you would be able to get quite a bit of production out of Sheldon Williams, about 12 points, 7 rebounds. Nicholas Shamboyo missed a little bit of the beginning part of the season. He's coming. He's been able to give you about 11.5 points per game for a team that's about country average with their 3-point shooting, but this is a team that they just don't really give you a lot on the inside, and it's a Corpus Corpus Christi team that, if you've looked in the past, they've been a team that has taken a lot of their shots from 2-point range. For the Texas A&M Corpus Christi team, in terms of percentage of their field goal attempts that come from inside the 3-point line, right now they're checking in 15th in all of college basketball, but yet they're not really executing there. As in terms of their overall 2-point shooting percentage, his team is about 326th with this regard as well. And for Corpus Christi, even though they do such a great job in terms of generating turnovers, I think that Stephen F. Austin going to do a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball. And this is going to be a pretty slow game, in my opinion. You've got a Stephen F. Austin team that, in terms of total possessions per game, right now they're checking in about 284th in the country. Corpus Christi is 234th. So do think that the defense wins out here with regards to total. Set mine at a 135. So in on the under, and with stone cold Stephen F. Austin, I'm going to be 108. I set them as a 5-point favorite. 306, 539, 306, 540. Alabama A&M is going to be playing us to Arkansas Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff is an underdog of 3.5 points. So in this game, 143.5 to 144.5, and I made a total of 146.5. I like the over, as Pine Bluff has been one of the most rapid-paced teams in all of college basketball. 46 in terms of total possessions per game. Have been getting slowed down a little bit more here in conference play, and it's an Alabama A&M team that is looking to play more slowly. 261st in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and I would not doubt it if they look to go even a little bit slower moving forward, because they bring in Grambling's coach in Dante Jackson in the offseason. Always played a very slow and controlled pace there, and he brought with him some of his top scorers. Kadavius Dozier being the main of them, 15 points per game, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point. James Graham, PJ Eason followed him over as well. Eason has been your top rebounder with about 7 boards, 7.5 points per game. James Graham dealt with a little bit of injury. He's come back and he's scored in double figures in each of the last 4 games, gives you about 8.5 points, shoots about 32.5% from 3, and it's an Alabama A&M team that's respectable on the defensive glass. Top 130 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so they're not allowing a lot of second and third chances. And one thing Alabama State does a great job of, getting to the free throw line. They're a top 50 team in terms of percentage of their possessions that end in a free throw. They're just not good with regards to being able to make their shots inside. They're actually outside the top 320 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Arkansas Pine Bluff, I would argue that you've got the best 2 players on the floor for this team. Jaquan Scott, 15.5 points, 7 boards, CO per game, shoots about 32.5% for 3, and Keon Williams shoots 38.5% for 3, 8 boards, 6 assists, stealing half per contest. He supplies about 18 points per game. It's a Pine Bluff team that has been a solid 3-point shooting team. I'm not going to necessarily call them amazing, but for Arkansas Pine Bluff, they do a nice job in terms of just overall shot making, 75.8% of the free throw line. That is a top 65 mark in all of college basketball from 3-point range. Right now, they're shooting about 34.1%. Now, that does fall to about 31% away from home compared to about 40% at home. So a big giant split there, but I do think that for Pine Bluff, they're going to be able to find a way to get to the free throw line. Alabama A&M does a great job in terms of fouling frequently, and Pine Bluff, one of the top teams in terms of giving fouls in all of college basketball as well. Do think that this is a nip and tuck spot, and I do think that Pine Bluff finds a way to be able to get the job done here. I did set them as a 2.5 point favorite, so with Pine Bluff, I'm going to be willing to take a shot on this money line with them, as I do think that the overall free throw shooting is going to be able to win out in a very physical game, and I do think that with the late fouls, you get over. So semi-total 146.5. I like the over, and Pine Bluff on the money line. 306, 541, 306, 542. Florida A&M is going to be on the road against Alcorn St. Alcorn St opened up as the 1 to 1.5 point underdog. They're now the 1 to 1.5 point favorite. Totals 138.5 to 139.5, and I set Florida A&M as the 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on them on the money line. It's just really hard to trust in an Alcorn St team that's as bad on defense as they are in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a nice, hearty 354th in the country. Alcorn St, a relatively mid-tempo team, 184th in terms of total possessions per game. Florida A&M is looking to play fast, 79th in terms of total possessions per game, and Florida A&M, they do have one main bugaboo. This is a team that has been absolutely terrible in terms of being able to take care of the ball. You look at them in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. This team is right now checking in well outside the top 350 in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, 361st, but you also have an Alcorn St team that they themselves have had all sorts of issues in terms of taking care of the ball. They, in terms of turnovers per possession, are 346. The Alcorn St, top 100 team with their 3-point shooting percentage hovering right around about 36 or so percent from the outside, even though you don't really have that one main scorer on the team. Shane Lancaster has been your top guy with about 11.5 points, 2 assists, shoots 49% from 3-point range, and then Tyson McDaniels, lone other double-figure scorer on the roster with about 10 points per game, but he really doesn't bomb it well from 3-point range. For Alcorn State, they're right now a bottom 5 team in the country in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 340 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, so massive issues there. They're a bottom 10 team in the country with regards to rebound percentage, and for Florida A&M, this team has been much better here in the second half of the season ever since they got Micah Octave back. He missed the first 9 games of the season. He's their top rebounder, 7.5 boards, 10.5 points per game for Florida A&M, even though overall overall for the season. They're averaging about 15.7 turnovers per game. That's come down a little bit more here in conference play. And in conference play, they're much better with their three-point shooting. They've been shooting 34.5% from three-point in SWAC play. They've been slowing down a little bit more, but they're still a relatively up-tempo team. For Florida A&M, you've had Jaquan Sanders along Tyler Shirley, both be able to give you double figures, a combined about 23.5 points per contest, with having Sanders shoot 37% from three-point. Now, overall for the season, it is a Florida A&M team that shoots 67.5% the free throw line. Again, in conference play, that's been much better, though, at 74.3% at the charity stripe, so you can trust in them in a little bit of a tight spot. It's an Alcorn St team that they shoot 68.7% at the free throw line. That has gone up to 72.8% in conference play as well, so a little bit of credit where it's due there, but I do think that for Florida A&M, with them being a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Alcorn St 14 plus turnovers per game, that wins out, and I do think they're going to get a nice up and down game with the just lack of efficiency of this Alcorn St defense. So semi line at 1.5. I like Florida A&M on the money line, and I'm in on the over. Semi total at a 145.5. 306.543, 306.544. Southern is on the road against Texas Southern. Texas Southern is doing right now the two-step to being an underdog. They're between a 2.5 to a 2-point underdog. Total in this game 153.5, and semi line at 3.5. So I'm going to be one to lay up to 3 with Southern. It's a Southern team that was once again very solid in terms of generating turnovers. They're a country average team in terms of taking care of the ball. And Texas Southern, they are not that. Texas Southern, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense right now, 314th in all of college basketball. Now, they've done a little bit of a better job in terms of taking care of it at home, and Southern isn't quite what they have been in past years with regards to generating turnovers, but they're still solid. 76th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And if you look at games played away from home, they do ascend in the top 55 with that regard, and Texas Southern is not a team that puts you under duress or outside the top 200 with this regard. Now, you've got Troy Hoopseed, who's been able to give you about 15 points, 7 boards, about a 33% three-point shooter, which typically in a lot of games, he's going to be the most versatile player out there on the floor, especially in the SWAC. But for this Southern team, they do have a guy that's able to match up on the inside, and Malik Agewald, who's been supplying 12 points, 7 rebounds per game. Not a guy that's going to take a lot of threes, but he controls the tenor of the game down low. And then AJ Barnes has been dealing with a little bit of injury, but he's been out there 6.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, and should be good to go in this game. While Michael Jacobs, he is that top scorer in this game, 19 points, 5 assists, 2 steals, shoots in the 30s from 3-point. Just a Southern team that has left us something to be desired with their overall shooting outside the top 230 with their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages. But that said, this has been a top 250 team with regards to rebound percentage, and this is a Texas Southern team that they just have not been able to do a good job on the glass whatsoever. They've been outside the top 235 with regards to rebound percentage, with having Hoopsy be the lone guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Dwayne Posey's the only other guy that gives you over 3.3 rebounds per game, about 8 points, 4.7 rebounds per game. And for Texas Southern, you've been able to get quite a bit out of Zaire Hayes, Bryce Robinson with regards to their 3-point shooting, with Bryce Roberts 13 points, shoots 37.5% for 3. Hayes is able to shoot 40.5% from the outside, but this team is a top 10 team in the country in terms of putting you on the free throw line, so that's going to be a problem for them. For this Texas Southern team, they're right around about 300th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and though this is a Southern team that I'm not going to call them amazing with their 3-point shooting, but it's not been bad overall for the season. They're shooting about 33% from 3-point range away from home. That's about country average. This is a team that's very content to be pile driving the ball down low. That's a lot of teams that are in the SWAC for Southern in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the 3-point line. Right now, they are 39th in the country. I do think that they carve them up to be able to get the job done. Did set a total here of a 153.5. Right now, we're seeing 153.5 in a lot of spots, but this opened up more around a 155. I'm still seeing a 154.5 out there, 154 higher in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with Southern and wrap things up with 306.545, 306.546. Nichols is on the road against East Christian. East Christian, a 1.5 point favorite to a 1.5 point underdog, depends upon your book. 142.5 is the total. I set a total of 139.5. I'm in on the under, mainly because I just don't think that you get enough clean possessions for the over. This Houston Christian team, in terms of total possessions per game, they are one of the slowest teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball, 352nd. Nichols, much more of a mid-tempo team at 196, but they cut down on the amount of clean possessions that you're going to have in a game with the way that they're able to generate turnovers. In terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, they are 15th in the country. Houston Christian is not quite that, and both of these teams do give up very wide open looks, as for Nichols, they're outside the top 250 in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting, and they're absolutely ghastly. In terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 37.9% is what teams shoot from 3-point range away from them against them, and it's a Houston Christian team that they themselves are 293rd in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but it's not necessarily a Houston Christian offense that knocks your socks off. They're in the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they're outside the top 225 with both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and it is a Houston Christian team that right now they are turning the ball over about 12.5 times per game. They're outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. You've got 2 double-figure scorers, Kylan Green along Damari Williams, who have been able to combine for about 20.5 points per contest. Neither guy shoots above 30% for three. Now, Trent Johnson does shoot 42.5% for three, 8.5 points per game, but that's leaving a whole heck of a lot of something to be desired, and that's a big reason why I did roll with Nicholls being a 1.5 point favorite. I'd be willing to lay up to play with them. Most places have them as that 1 to 1.5 point underdog. Most likely you're just going to find a place where they're the underdog and take them on the money line. It sits here Malone along with Trey English. Both give you 2 steals per game apiece. English, more of that facilitator, 10.5 points. He gives out about 3.2 assists per game. Doesn't shoot it well from three. Malone does shoot 33% for three. And then Jalik Dunkley has been your top scorer, 13.5 points, 7 boards. He's able to shoot about 34.5% from 3-point range. It's a Nicholls team as well outside the top 290 in terms of their rebound percentage. And in a tight spot, they do shoot just 66.2% at the free throw line. That's a bit of an issue. And Houston Christian, they shoot 70% at the free throw line. And Houston Christian has been a little bit better with regards to rebound percentage. But again, they've been pretty ghastly on defense as well. And with their turnover issues, I do think the Nicholls feast on that. I just don't think they get enough clean possessions for the over. So in on the under. And I do like Nicholls here on the money line. And that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to Nate Hornung, better known as Shaggy Betts, for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we all fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @G_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter, so per usual, please send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, giving you picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.